Welcome to the last episode of From the Stands, the Cool Pick Show for 2020. Again, this is the last episode of From the Stands as well, because we are, again, as a reminder, changing platforms to say, for the show, calling it the Players Experience come January. So we're really excited for you to tune into this last episode of 2020. And we have a very special guest again in Todd Stottlemyre, two-time World Series champion with the Toronto Blue Jays and 15-year MLB alumni. We're excited to chat with Todd about his experiences, his favorite memories, and also about his new book that is coming out at the end of December. Before we bring Todd on, of course, we'd like to give a shout out to our production team, Jay Solti Photography, for all the production work that they're doing with the show, as well as our sponsors, Hush Blanket and the Great North Apparel. Again, guys, if you want stuff for Christmas and into the new year, just hit up the links in my bio for your discount codes, where you'll be able to get some great gear at a discounted price. Without further ado, let's get Todd on the show and start talking some baseball and hear how he got the nickname the Yellow Jacket. All right, Todd, the Yellow Jacket Stottlemyre. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Honored, man, Ryan. I really appreciate it. I'm humbled and honored to hang out with you, though.
Thank you. Hey, man, I'm just blown away you were able to get on the show after the last bit we've been talking. I'm so thrilled that you finally were able to do this. So thank you for taking the time to chat.
You got it. So tell me again where you came up with Yellow Jacket.
So I was chatting with Pat Henkin about 10, 11 episodes ago. We were talking about some of his baseball memories and his experiences, and he brought up your name, and then he's like, yeah, Todd used to go by the name of Yellow Jacket, because I think he said Rance Mulligans was the one that gave you that nickname, because you kept buzzing around and you were always firing up the boys and everything. And so that's where I heard the nickname.
Yeah, I can still hear Rance Mulligans, yelling at me, Yellow Jacket, now in the clubhouse. So great memory. I appreciate it. So
of course, man. So in 1983, you were drafted by the New York Yankees, but declined to sign. You then went on to attend Yakima Valley Community College and then played collegiate ball with the Harwich Mariners, if I said that right. You were then drafted again by the Cardinals, but then again declined to sign again. How important was it for you to go through school before starting your baseball career?
Yeah, the first time it was really difficult. Growing up with my father in Yankee Stadium, and where that whole dream really began, was inspired, was, I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps, and just growing up in that whole environment, atmosphere. It's like, everything was the Yankees to us and to our family, of course. And then to get drafted by the Yankees out of high school, it was like, wow, this is a dream come true. And I would tell you that it was difficult telling the Yankees no, but, my brother was a year in front of me in school, and he'd gone on to college, and just being away from home for the first time. There's so much, getting the education is really important, but there's also more importance. It's that, where you're on your own, you're trying to figure things out. And during that time, that young part of my life is, I really needed to go through that, and really needed to go through that stage. My mom was really, really pressing me to go to school. And it kind of came down to the last, few days before I entered into school, and it was like I had to make a decision, and the Yankees were still pressing me to sign. And my dad came to me and he's like, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I think I'm just going to go to school." And for me, it was kind of the easy way out. It was like, and my thought was, school will be great for me. Being on my own will be great for me. Getting an education. And then if I'm really good enough after all of that, then there will still be the opportunity to pursue the dream. And my thinking was, if I'm not good enough, well, then I'll fail early by signing with the Yankees out of high school. So if it's supposed to work out, it'll all work out. And it was, for me, it was a great step. I think that, for a lot of high school athletes that get the opportunity to either go pro or go into college, it's a tough decision. And I don't believe there's one way or a certain decision that says it's right. It's really something personal. For me, I just turned 18. I was young. I was immature. I needed to grow up, and school was a great step for me.
And talking about what you just said about, like, if it works out, it works out. It certainly did work out for you, because later in 1985, the Toronto Blue Jays selected you and you signed with them, where you would spend 7 seasons with them from 88 to 94. What was it like for you to be able to start your pro career with the Jays?
Well, what's funny is my whole childhood, right, and growing up and wanting to pursue Major League Baseball, wanting to follow my father's footsteps. The last thing that I ever thought about was that I would be pursuing that dream and that career in another country. And so I got to tell you, I wouldn't change anything. Toronto was, and the country of Canada was great to me. It was great to those teams. I always tell people, it's like, it was really something, because, when we were fighting to win our first world championship, we were representing more than a baseball team. We were representing more than a city. We were representing a country. And even though we had people come from all around the world, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, the U.S., you had all these people that gathered on a 25-man team that was really pulling the same rope, had the same vision. And I would tell you that we took pride and ownership in being the team in Canada. So I always say it was kind of like, it was a sense of, we really felt the heartbeat of being Canadian. And it was, I tell you, it was cool. And it was absolutely hands down playing in Toronto, playing for the Blue Jays, winning world championships with the likes of Paul Beeston and Pat Gillick and Cito Gaston and an incredible leadership and management team. And then all of the guys, I wouldn't trade that for anything. It was so unbelievable, so awesome. And it was the best part of my playing career, was playing in Toronto.
And feeding off that experience in Toronto and how much you loved the city and the country, I actually got the fortunate pleasure of, I think it was a year or 2 years ago, where the Jays hosted like an anniversary game where you, Henkin, Rance, like there was a bunch of guys that came and did like autographs and met with players and all that. So I actually got to meet you a couple of years ago in person, and not only yourself, but all the other guys that were there, just the glow of the look on your faces, being back in the stadium and being able to like interact with the fans and everything. It was just like a heartwarming feeling on my end as well.
Yeah, it's like a brotherhood and a family that's never disconnected. And when you think about Major League Baseball, I mean, as you go through the season, you spend more time with your teammates than you do your own family. So those teammates and that organization and just the way they treated us, from the top down, we felt as if we were a family. So, and that's never been disconnected. And when you win a world championship together and you go through all the ups and downs, trials and tribulations, you go through all of those things, you go through a lot as a family, and it also connects that group. So when anytime that I'm invited back to Toronto and with the guys and the Blue, I mean, it is such an unbelievable feeling. It's hard to describe and hard to get people to understand, but it's just like, man, it's like family coming back together, and it's just so special.
Now, you ended up winning 2 World Series in Toronto, and obviously 92 and 93, as every Toronto Blue Jay fan should know. But how much work and dedication went into being able to win the championships with the Jays, and how happy were you with the production, not just in the regular season, but the playoffs?
Well, even prior to me getting there, and you look back on Toronto's history, 1985, they had a great club, man. 1987, they just missed. My first year was 1988. I think in 89, we went up against the A's. We missed. And 91 was a tough one. We had a great year. We thought we had the right team. We had a great team of guys put together. And then we went up against the Minnesota Twins and lost in the first round. And I'll tell you, that was disheartening. So I'll never forget 1992, man. Everyone came back to spring training hungry and hungry not to win the division, hungry not to win in the playoffs. It was like the hunger was not even to just get to a World Series. We wanted to be world champions. And that team, man, was just a dedicated team. It was a dedicated group of guys. It takes everything you've got, and then you got to have some luck also on your side. But, it's the daily grind of in and out. People don't realize, but, you know, a lot of guys get to the stadium 12, 1 o'clock. And by the time the game is over and you're showered and you kind of decompressed and all the thing from the game, a lot of times you're not getting home till midnight, 1 o'clock. So you're talking 12, 13, 14-hour days, literally for 6 and 7 straight months to try to win that war. So it definitely takes a lot of work. You got to have some luck. You got to have the talent, and you got to have people pulling the same vision. And you know, what was neat is you got a bunch of all-stars on that team. And, you know, when you look back to 92, 93, and there was a number of guys that played on those teams that are today in the Hall of Fame. So you're talking about greatness. Well, they were able to, those great players, one of the things that was unique about them is they were able to check their ego at the door, that it was bigger than just themselves. It was bigger than going 4 for 4. It was about the team winning. And those teams at 7 o'clock, I always say 7:05, they turn the lights on. It's 25 guys from all around the world coming together for one vision. And that's truly what it was.
That's incredible. And there's no better way to put it, because that's exactly what team bonding is. And that's where you lead to success. Now, talking about famous moments that go down in history, again, 92 is going to go down in history, 93 for back-to-back championships with the Blue Jays. I see that smile on your face. I know you know where I'm going with this. In 93, Game 4 against Philadelphia. I feel like this is the most asked question with you, and I have to ask it. You know, you tried to go from first to third when Roberto Alomar hit a single. There was some hesitation running from second to third, resulting in you getting a tag out, but in the process, you scraped your chin. This led for, I don't know why, but this led for some reason, the mayor of Philadelphia, Ed Randall, to show his displeasure, like through the paper or however he did it. What was it like for you to kind of feed off that hunger of like wanting to prove him wrong, but also helping the Jays win a World Series and ultimately shut up the mayor of Philly?
Yeah, well, you know, look, if we go back, you know, my days in Toronto, you know, I was a very, very emotional player. And you know, a lot of times I crossed the line. And of course, you know, when the mayor of Philadelphia challenged me before my Game 4 start, it's the one time that a starting pitcher goes in and meets with the media the day before he pitches. It's the only time is in a World Series. And when I got in with Howie Starkman, and he was the PR director. We got in, and there's media and press everywhere, and they just started firing. Hey, the mayor said this, the mayor said that, the mayor said he could hit you. The mayor said Toronto must be throwing the World Series. How could they be starting you? And being an emotional guy and a young guy, it was like, man, it was all the fuel I needed to respond. And then I got into, it became me responding, not so much to the media, not to so much how am I going to beat the Phillies, how am I going to get the Philly hitters out. It was all about me against the mayor. And all of my emotions came out. And Howard Starkman finally got me out of there. But the problem was, you know, my emotions had been basically triggered, and it was all I could think about is how dare this guy and this and that. And by the time I got to the game, I got to tell you something, I was emotionally worn out by the time I got to that game. But, you know, as I'm running from first to second base, what's the smart thing? I'm a starting pitcher. I got my jacket on. You know, I play in the American League. We're not used to going to the plate. You know, I haven't hit since I was a kid. All of these things. So the smart thing is coast into second base, stand there, because we got the meat of our order coming up. That, by the way, that is an incredible baseball logic, and that's smart. And, of course, I knew all of this. I grew up in the game. But something triggered in me, and something triggered right around second base was the ball went into center field. Lenny Dykstra doesn't have a good arm. He's never going to expect me to go to third. And I'm like, man, I'm going for it. And maybe part of it was the edge of the mayor and the whole deal. But then as I rounded second base, I always tell people I was running as hard as I could run, just not very fast. And I realized that as I was approaching third, I was in big trouble. So I just kind of like Supermaned it. Like, I'm just going to go for it and just reach and dive. And of course, my head first slide was chin first slide, and literally hit chin first. That was the first body part to touch the ground, and all of the pressure, and tore my chin up. and literally I blacked out for a couple seconds, and I got to remember, I remember Cito coming out there. I got to my feet, and I was still a little blurry and dizzy and this and that. He says, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm good." The truth of the matter is I wasn't good, but and then I went back out on the mound and then just ended up pitching one of the worst games I've ever pitched at one of the biggest moments. And because of it, it was probably one of the most incredible learning experiences about me, my thoughts, my emotions, my responses, how to get ready, blocking things out, all of those things, which is why, Rance Mulliniks called me Yellow Jacket, because if you lit me up, man, I was on fire, and my hair was on fire, and I was just reacting and going as hard as I could go. But, the irony of it is I gave it everything I got. Was it smart? No. Did I still give it everything I had? Of course. If the situation came up again, would I just coast into second and stop there? Of course. But, we don't get to replay. We just get to reflect. I don't get to do it over. I just get to reflect and learn and get better. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, people remember it everywhere, and they have a lot of fun with it. And I always have fun with it too, because it was just one of those things where I was going for it. I was all out. That doesn't make it smart, doesn't make it right. And I still say to this day, listen, I beat the throw. I was safe. I just got called out.
Hey, you know what? Baseball's all about the fun and the experiences that come along with it. If you play just a standard textbook game of base-to-base plays or something like that, it's going to be a boring game. You got to make things exciting, right?
Well, I was a long ways from boring when I pitched, because anything could happen in the game I pitched. It could have ended up into a brawl. There could a lot of things that can happen. And it's funny you mentioned that. Is I remember one of the umpires. He was the head of the umpires. It was after I retired, and I went to a spring training game out here in Arizona. And he said, "Todd," he says, "you probably don't know this, but I want to tell you something." He says, "When you pitched," he said, all the umpires, we all knew. We got to the stadium a little earlier than a normal game, because we knew we had to mentally get ready. This was a huge compliment, by the way. He said, "We knew we had to mentally get ready, because we knew you were ready to go to war from pitch one, and we needed to be on our game." He says, and here's what he said. He said, "You actually made us better." And I kind of laughed with him, and I said, "Yeah." I said, "You guys used to throw me out of games left and right." He says, "Well, you forced us to." So, it was fun. And to think and have a guy that's the head of the Umpires Association say, "Hey, we had to get ready because we knew you were ready." I felt good about that, because that's kind of how I approached the game. It was like I was going to leave it all on the playing field every time I went out there. So
that's fantastic. And yeah, you really have to. Like, I play baseball with the Special Olympics. We've been to 2 national tournaments. We represented Canada at the North American Games just last year. And after a 15-hour bus ride, man, like, I get it. You have to get that mentality into the game and get ready for it. Now, after your time with the Jays, you played with the Athletics, the Cardinals, the Rangers, and the Diamondbacks. Out of those 5 ball clubs that you played with, which experience do you think was your most favorite? And you know what? I'm going to take the Jays out just because we just talked about your Jays.
Yeah, of course, the Blue Jays. Other than the Blue Jays, I would tell you that, St. Louis felt the most like home.
Okay.
And it probably felt more like Toronto than any other place. I would tell you it was fun playing with the Cardinals, because they had a rich history. You go to spring training, and Red Shandies is there, and Lou Brock is there, and Bob Gibson is there. So, I was in awe of that. It's like, you got these guys, Hall of Famers, these great Cardinal players, and both Bob Gibson and Lou Brock both competed against my father in the '64 World Series. So it felt like family when I was in St. Louis, much like Toronto. So I would say that, if you said, "Hey, you got to pick one place," I would tell you, other than Toronto, I would tell you that St. Louis, and I got great memories there, and it was fun being a Cardinal. Isn't it funny that I say pick those 2 teams, and they're both mascots are a bird?
Yep. That's hey, it all.
I don't know what that means, by the way. But anyways,
It just means you like birds a lot, and red and blue are your favorite colors. That's it.
there you go. I love it. There you go.
Now, we had a fan question come in asking about your brother. So your brother, Mel Stottlemyre Jr., also played in the major and is currently the pitching coach with the Miami Marlins. How was it growing up with your brother, both playing in the majors and now seeing him as a coach?
Well, unfortunately for him in his playing career, he got cut short because of injury, so but he pushed me and I probably pushed him and both of us being very close in age. We played on the same high school team, playing same American Legion team. So, we were good for one another because we were always pushing one another and that sort of thing. But I would tell you this, because his career was cut short, he was also a great mentor for me. I could reach out to him. I could call him, what do you think, bro, of this and that or whatever. But he was also a huge cheerleader for my career. And he was the older brother and his career got cut short. So that's not always the easiest thing to do, but he took it in stride. He was always a great cheerleader for me in my career and moving through my career. And I would tell you now, seeing him as a coach, not just for the Marlins, but he's coached with the Diamondbacks. He's coached with the Mariners. And if you really look at, he's really created a name for himself to develop young major league pitchers into stars. And he had a closer with Seattle that ended up winning, the Rolaids Relief Award and had more saves than anybody in the game. And now he's got these young guys in Miami that have all of this raw talent. But if you take a look at those pitching staff and it's like, man, those guys just keep getting better and better and better. And there's a reason for that. And I believe that my brother, Mel Jr., is a big part of that reason and guiding them to their greatness. So he's going to do great things down there in Miami. He's got a great manager in Don Mattingly. They got a great owner. That guy's name is Derek Jeter. So it's a group of winners that are coming together to develop a major league team. I think you'll see big things from the Marlins over the next 2, 3, 4 years, and I think my brother will have a lot to do with it. I'm so proud of him because, he's really made a name for himself in the game as a coach. And, he's kind of following in my father's footsteps as far as the coaching career. And, he's going to do great things. I keep hoping and praying that he can get to a world championship and be able to get a chance to feel that, to go through it, to experience it, and to win that ring. Because at the end of the day, everyone that puts that uniform on is playing for that ring. So I hope he gets his shot at it.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I've been a fan. So being a Jays fan, I think you can't like the New York Yankees just because they're one of the biggest rivals of the Jays. Right. However, I love Derek Jeter. I watched him growing up, watched a few Yankee games, saw his playing style, saw how positive of a role model he is outside of the sport. So I think, I completely agree that team's going to go very well or very far over the next few years. And it would be great to see them get a ring and have a chance to fight for one as well.
Yep, for sure.
Now, as I mentioned at the start of the show, I chatted with Pat Henkin and he mentioned the yellow jacket comment. One question I had asked him, we were talking about like mentorship and players that kind of helped guide him throughout his playing career. And he mentioned your name. And so what I want to ask you is that, and one of the favorite aspects that he said that stood out to him about you is that you were a gamer because you were always tough. You had everyone's back. And then, of course, you were known as the Yellow Jacket. But since I asked him, what was one of your favorite aspects about Pat?
Well, I would mirror it. He was a gamer, man. And, I got a front row seat to watching him come up and then develop, become Cy Young Award winner, the first Cy Young Award winner for Toronto, I believe, in the history. But this guy was the real deal, man. He was what I loved about Pat Henkin is he was a big game pitcher, man. And he would also tell you, hey, man, you nervous about going and pitching this game? Yeah. He would say, yeah, I'm nervous, but I'm ready. And I got to tell you, you can't help but love the way he would compete on the mound. So everything he said about me, I would tell you that it's exactly actually how I felt about him. I'm honored and humbled that he would even mention me in your guys' discussion because, he was a better pitcher than I ever was, and he was a big game pitcher. He won some huge games for the Blue Jays. He won a lot of games. So when I look back on his career, it's like, his pitching career was better than my pitching career, and he was a better pitcher than I was. So I'm honored and humbled that he had great things to say about me. But I would just tell you that for me, I was in front of him. I was a little bit older. I got there a little bit sooner. So I really got a front row seat to watching him become great, because he wasn't a good pitcher. He was a great pitcher.
And like you said, it's all about that team bonding, getting to feed off one another, helping each other out on the mound or wherever it is to just get better in the sport, right?
We had a cool pitching staff. I think about Hinken, and I think about Guzman. I think about the guys, Jimmy Keys, and I think about these guys: Dave Steed, Jack Morris, David Cohn, David Wells. I can go on. All of these guys that would take the ball as a starting pitcher. And Jack Morris, I mean, on any given day, someone could go out there and throw a shutout. Of course, Jack Morris, you mentioned Jack Morris, Dave, Steve, Jimmy, of course, but Guzman could go throw a shutout. Hinken could go throw a shutout. I could possibly go throw a shutout. On any given day, whoever had the ball that day had the potential of throwing a shutout. And that's one of the reasons why our clubs were so good, is because our starting pitchers had the capability to stop losing streaks. And Pat Hinken was a big reason why, we did so well, because he could stop a losing streak and start a winning streak literally by taking the ball, going out there and giving us 9 great innings. So
that's remarkable. And you know what? So I'm a '90s baby, so I was only 2 and 3 years old when you guys won the World Series. But just being able to go back and watch some of the footage and the old style clips and see the gameplay, it's truly remarkable. Again, that team bonding, and like you said, just being able to go out there, get the job done, and potentially throw those shutouts without any questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you retired from playing the game in 2002. How was it for you to be able to leave the game on your own terms after a tremendous 15-year career and 2 World Series championships?
Well, probably easier for me than most guys, because I was truly done. Injuries had crept up on me. My shoulder was shot, my elbow was shot, my hip was shot. Physically, I knew I was done. And there's something about knowing personally when you're done. The problem, I think, with most guys is maybe they don't get offered a contract and that's it. And they still feel like they can compete. And the transition is hard. It was easier for me because I knew I'd left it all on the field. I knew I didn't have anything left in the tank for me to give. So it was an easier walk away for me. And the other thing too is, growing up in the game and then playing the game, my whole life was Major League Baseball. It was either my father playing, coaching, or me playing. So, when I was done, I welcomed the break, and I thought, man, I'll take a year off and travel and have a summer vacation, spend time with my family, and just try to kick back on this. So I would tell you that I believe that my transition was probably easier than most guys.
Okay. Yeah, because the thing is that there's so many, especially nowadays, there's so many injuries that like you have to deal with. You alluded to it with Mel Jr. and how his career was cut short, and you never know, like tomorrow is never promised. So you have to fight and do what you have to do now to try and prepare for the next day. So it's, on one hand, it's easier, but on the other hand, it's never easy going from the pitching mound, spending the time with the guys to spend the time at home, right?
It's crazy. I was 34 at the time, so my career was cut short, but I still got the 15 years in, So you look at 15 years, you say, man, that's a long time for a pitcher. I was only 34 years old. I was in the middle of my prime. I was pitching as good as I've ever pitched, and then injury finally took me out. So, some guys get the blessing of keeping their bodies together and pitching to 38, 39, 40 and above. Other guys, like my brother, he was in his 20s. For me, I was 34. So for my father, he was 32 years old and his career was cut short. So injuries have its way. And when you play a sport and it puts all the demands on your body to compete at the highest level, one of the things that are going to pop up sometimes is injuries. And some of those injuries are severe enough to end careers. So knowing that, as I always tell people, I go, listen, this is a short window. You don't know how long it's going to come. And in life, you said it perfectly. In life, we don't know. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. And it's why it's like one of the things I stress to people all the time is wherever you are, be there, make the most of it, and be grateful for it. Make the most of it, be grateful for it, because we don't have any idea what tomorrow looks like.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Now, since your retirement, you have put your knowledge of the game into a book. Can you remind me what the book is called?
So the first book I wrote was Your 9 Steps to Major League Achievement. The Relentless Success is the title of the book, but it was 9 Steps to Major League Achievement. And then I just wrote a new book. I wrote it during the summer, as we were going through COVID, and it's going to be released December 29th. That book is called The Observer: A Modern Fable for Mastering Your Thoughts and Emotions.
Okay, cool. Now, what drove you behind wanting to write a book, and what's the key message behind them?
So the first book 5 years ago was really written because, I spent some time with my father, and he was going through a tough time, and he was in this battle for his life. He was fighting multiple myeloma, blood cancer. And I just realized, watching him go through the wars and watching him fight for this thing, it struck me that I was watching the greatest warrior of my life. And because he refused to play victim, and he refused to give power over his cancer. He was given power over his future and fighting for his life and seeing the good in things. And it blew me away. And when I was up with him up in Washington as he was going through this battle, I just realized that, I've had a great father. And he's been a father and a coach and a best friend and a mentor. And he's been all of these things for my life. And everything, all his lessons and all his mentorship was on me trying to become the best version of myself. And then also, not only that, but being around some of the greats, Cito Gaston and Tony La Russa and then all of the guys that I played with and the guys on those championships, to learn from each and every one of them, to have a front row seat to all of their greatness. You learn so many things, but as you learn, you apply it so that you can get better. But what I realized when I was with my father was, I was like, man, I've never shared lessons that I got from some of these greats with other people to help them have greatness. And at that moment, I was like, man, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to write a book on where I was struggling and the people around me that helped me, get back on my feet and then help me get to the next step. And I decided to write Relentless Success 5 years ago. After I wrote the book, I still had this book burning in me called The Observer. And the reason that I recently just wrote this book, and it comes out December 29th, it's like I'm so proud of it. And I put my heart and soul into it because it was really my life. And it's a story with characters, but those characters go through some of my real life events. And, we were talking about the 93 World Series earlier, and it was kind of, what led me to writing this book all these, 20 something years later. It's like called The Observers because, after the 93 World Series, I got back home to Florida, and I just remember looking in the mirror and what, if you looked at me from the outside, here I am. I lived out my childhood dream. I just became a back-to-back world champion in Toronto. I'm making millions of dollars. It looks like, man, this guy's got it all. And that's how it looked from the outside. But the problem is, when I stared in the mirror, I didn't like the guy looking back at me. And matter of fact, I hated the guy looking back at me because the guy looking back at me had given my little brother a bone marrow transplant 12 years earlier, put my little brother into a coma, and then eventually took his life. So when I looked at me, I didn't like what I seen. Matter of fact, I couldn't stand myself. And because when I was 15 and my little brother was 11, I gave him a bone marrow transplant. That transplant ultimately put him into a coma and then took his life. So when I left that hospital after he'd taken his last breath, of course I was sad and it was horrible. My mother and father had to bury their 11-year-old son. and my 11-year-old brother. Well, I was 15 at the time, and I left with hate. I hated the world because my little brother had just gotten taken away from me, but I also felt guilty. I was like, if it wasn't for my Merrill, maybe he would be alive today. So I looked at myself as the guy that had something to do with him dying. I felt like the murderer of my little brother because it was my Merrill. And I lived with that for 12 years, and it was finally, and I never healed it. And I just, and every time I got into a situation where I couldn't control something, the hate and guilt, all of that emotion would rise to the surface. And what it would do, it would ruin the mastery of the moment. I would destroy it. Sometimes it would be into a fight on a baseball field. Sometimes I would lose my mind. Sometimes it was off the field, sometimes on the field. But when I got home in 1993, here's what I realized. I said, man, I'm a better pitcher than I'm showing. I didn't like the way I was performing on the field. I said, man, I know I'm better than this. But there was another problem. I didn't like the way I was performing in life. So I realized at that time, I was like, man, I need help. And I reached out to a guy by the name of Harvey Dorfman. He was the mindset guru of Major League Baseball. And I called him. I said, Harvey, I said, this is Todd Stottlemyre. And he goes, man, I've been waiting on your call. I didn't even know Harvey knew who I was. And I said, man, I said, Harvey, I need help. He goes, I know. So we booked an appointment. I literally drove across the state. We spent 12 hours in a hotel room together. And I'll never forget it. In the first hour, he asked me an important question. He says, Todd, he says, would you do it again? I said, man, do what? He said, would you give a bone marrow transplant to your little brother again? Man, I just broke down. I lost it. And I said, man, Harvey, I do it every minute. I do it every hour. I do it every day. I do it over and over. And I do it as many times. He says, well, didn't you already do it? I said, yeah. He said, did you do everything you could do? I said, yeah, Harvey, I did everything I could do. He said, Todd, you didn't kill your little brother. You need to let it go. You've already done everything you could have possibly done. And he said to me, let it go and forgive yourself. You're not the reason. And I got to tell you something. He gave me permission to forgive myself, something I wasn't willing to do at 15, 16, 17, 22, 25, 20. I wasn't willing to. I carried it with me. So I was living in the prison of my own unforgiveness. And when he said, let it go, it was the most freeing thing in the world. The last hour of our conversation, he put me on a 7-day challenge. Here's what he said. He said, over the next 7 days, you're not allowed to respond emotionally to any challenges or any hurdles. He says, all I want you to do, and here was the key. He goes, I want you to observe how you're thinking. I want you to observe how you feel, and you're not allowed to respond. You can only document your feelings. 7 days. That 7-day challenge changed my life. It was the becoming the observer of my life. Think about it. There's a stimulus and there's a reaction. And a lot of times we react out of stimulus and then we're sorry for it later. And you think about the world today and how much hate there is and our response, our knee-jerk responses. And it's like there's so much more hate today than there is love being presented everywhere. Well, I lived there. I lived in hate. I lived in guilt. So me writing this book, The Observer, was all about teaching people to step away from themselves, to understand what are their thoughts and to have tools to do thought replacement. How do you feel? Because listen, thoughts drive emotions and emotions drive the destiny of your life. I didn't like the direction of the destiny, where it was going. I didn't like my responses. I didn't like my performances on or off the field. I was like, man, I'm better than this. I want to change. So it really has been driving me to write this book, The Observer. And there's about 50 plus different models and success principles in there. It's a toolbox for people to help people pursue a better version of themselves. See, I just happened to be at that place where I was like, I didn't like who I was. I looked in the mirror and I couldn't stand that guy. And I was like, man, I want to change. So for me, it was my mess that I needed to overcome. That was personal to me. And today I share my mess with you because I've overcome it. Today it's my message. And my message is, it's like, listen, if you're hanging on to something, you got to let it go. Because if you're hanging on to it, a past circumstance, a current circumstance, if you're hanging on to someone you need to forgive, or if you're hanging on to somebody, maybe that's somebody you need to forgive is yourself. You're living in a prison that you built. And what it really means is you're destroying the best version of yourself in the present moment. That was me. And then there's all the high performance, the things that I got from Pat Hinken, the things I got from Cito Gaston, the things I got from those championship teams, all the lessons I got from my father. They're all in principles weaved inside this story to help people pursue their potential. And it's kind of I'm 55 today. Guess what I'm doing? I'm pushing the envelope every day, trying to just get a little bit better so I can literally push my potential up the mountain. That's it. That's The Observer. I'm so proud of this book, Ryan, like never before. There's a lot of truth to the story, even though, it's a story, and there's the real principles, real models inside this book. And I just put everything I could into it. And it was really me through other characters in the book, sharing some life story to try to help people out, to try to help people pursue their potential.
Well, I know, Todd, I'm excited to get it when it comes out. I think it's very important, especially like you touched on in today's day and age and today's world with everything that is happening, that you need to share your story and you need to share how to forgive yourself and forgive others for those barriers. Otherwise, it's not going to be a barrier that you can hop over at any point in your life. So I thank you for sharing that message. And for everyone that's watching, make sure December 29th, The Observer by Todd Stottlemyre. Go get it. Go get it wherever you shop your books. You will not be disappointed with the book. Again, I'm excited to get it myself, and I'll let you know what I think, because I'm excited.
Yeah, awesome, man. Yeah, you can pre-order it now. So you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or come to my website at toddofficial.com, and we can direct you on where to order the book. But you can pre-order now. And like I say, man, it's like, I put everything I could into this thing. So I'm really proud of it.
Amazing. And one other thing that I'm really surprised at is you do not look 55, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I just have a couple more questions for you that relate to baseball and your career with just MLB as a whole. You spent, as you said, 15 years with MLB. You got to see a bunch of different stadiums. I think probably all of the stadiums at this point. Which stadium was your, outside of Toronto again, was your favorite to pitch in or to just travel to?
I loved pitching in Yankee Stadium. Just growing up there as a kid. Not only that, when you're in New York, they got some tough fans. So it's like they're going to be tough on you. You're coming in there as an opposing player, and I loved it. I loved the feeling of feeling like the underdog, but I also feeling like the underdog. But at the same time, it was like, all those memories of growing up, Yankee Stadium was my playground. So competing against the Yankees, being out there on that mound in Yankee Stadium, I cherished it. I loved being out there.
And it's a wholesome feeling, like you said, with your dad and your brother and everything.
For sure.
Able to full circle and bring it up.
For sure.
Now, everyone is going to have different advice or different, what I like to call in this segment, words of wisdom that they want to share with other individuals, whether it's the next generation of athlete getting into sport or someone that wants to further their career. What kind of words of wisdom would you want to share with those next generation of athletes?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just remember everything's hard, and everything worthwhile is uphill. It's going to be an uphill battle. And what you do daily counts. And it's like, it's the things we do every single day. It's that consistency, and consistency is the mother of mastery. Just understand, play the long game. There's no hacks to playing Major League Baseball. There's no like a baseball hack or a shortcut. Man, you got to go, or any sport, or to represent any kind of greatness in your life. Play the long game. What you do daily, every time what you do daily counts. And just understand, everything's hard. I always say you got to pick your pain. You see, for me, the dream was real. So me not making it to Major League Baseball would have been painful. But guess what? To make it to Major League Baseball, the dedication, the discipline, everything you had to go to was also painful. I had to pick my pain. I tell people all the time, listen, being poor and not having enough money at the end of the month, that's painful. Well, to be financially free, I want you to know something. In order to get there, it's going to be painful. I tell people, if you're married, divorce is painful. Marriage is painful. You see, at the end of the day, being overweight, out of shape, and bad health, painful. Getting in great shape, that's going to be painful. At the end of the day, what I would tell the young people is, you're going to have to pick your pain. But if you think that there's not going to be pain, there's not going to be challenge, there's not going to be some suffering, there's not going to be some setback, man, you're not living in the real world. And then the last piece of this that I would say is go fail every day, because the failures are the teachers of what you need to do to get better in order to have the success that you desire. Go fail your face off.
Incredible. Well, Todd, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, sharing your favorite moments. Again, guys, The Observer comes out December 29th. You can pre-order it now. Get the book. You won't be disappointed. And Todd, thank you again for taking the time to be on the show. I really appreciate it.
Man, I appreciate it. I'm humbled and honored. Thanks for reaching out to me and your persistence. And I'm glad I got the opportunity to share with you today. So thank you, sir.
Awesome. All right. Until next time, take care. All right, guys, that was 15-year MLB alumni Todd Stottlemyre, two-time World Series champs with the Toronto Blue Jays. Thank you again to Todd for taking the time to be on the show. And to everyone, that does it for 2020. It was a wild ride this year, and we look forward to having you tune in to more episodes in 2021. Have a great holiday, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you in a few weeks in 2021.